Hello, and welcome to Making Creativity Pay, the podcast where we talk to people in creative industries about how they promote and market their work. I'm Dan Barnett, and on this episode I spoke with actress and comedian Nerine Skinner. We talk about her experiences creating online videos and sketches, and the influence Liz Truss has had in her career, both in terms of creating videos for YouTube and TikTok, as well as being a big part of her 2024 Edinburgh show, The Exorcism of Liz Truss. We talk about the demands of creating topical comedy, her experience on Britain's Got Talent, the financial pressures of the Fringe, and about running her own comedy night, Crackin Comedy, where she looks to create the right atmosphere for both comedians and audience. I started by asking Nerine to give a quick intro about herself.
Hello, my name is Nerine Skinner. I'm an actress, comedian, writer, improviser, loads of jack of all trades, probably master of none. And I have most recently been doing Liz Truss parodies and was on Britain's Got Talent and reached the semi-finals.
Yes, a bit like a lot of people I speak to, very few people are comedian, musician, whatever. They'll do acting, do photography, do writing, whatever it is. There's always that kind of thing. So it's interesting that it seems a lot of people within the industry, it's creativity full stop rather than I want to be a specific thing. I mean, have you found that through your career there's been times where certain things have been of more interest than others?
Yes, I think it's really interesting because I actually am in that situation at the moment where I'm trying to work out where I go next, and I think it happens naturally. There's a sort of flow to it where something seems more popular than something else for whatever reason, whether that's just what the public wants or whether it's something that I'm feeling more like I'm leaning into. So it's a really interesting area actually, and I think it does just come and go. At the moment it feels like impressions and parodies are where I'm headed, but there is also a time when you go, actually I really want to do a song. I'm just going to sing for no reason. So I think it is, it's very varied.
With the comedy, I mean, what was the kind of starting point? I know you were initially on Britain's Got Talent, so how did that come about?
So I initially got into comedy through my comedy partner, Lizzie Franks. We met doing a pantomime, just playing a pair of bread rolls, baguette and croissant, in the, those very well-known bread rolls, or rolls, in Beauty and the Beast. And we got on really well, and I hadn't really thought about comedy so much up until that point. I'd done a bit of stand-up and kind of left it, but because I trained in musical theatre, that was my focus at the time. And then suddenly we met and got on really well and just decided that we wanted to work together, and then another job opportunity presented itself, and the next minute we were in Edinburgh, having never done that before. So it was this spiral really, and then that got me back into comedy, and I thought, I'd love to do my own stuff one day, but was really enjoying what we were doing. And then she went off and did important things and had a family and those kind of things. And I thought I'll start doing my own stuff. And then you stumble into the next, funnily enough, Panto keeps presenting people to me. So I met another lady who had this group called The Dots, the comedy, well, it wasn't a comedy at the time, just a nice vocal singing group, really beautiful harmonies. She wanted to make it into a comedy act, and then the next thing we were in Britain's Got Talent. So it's kind of, that's how it's gone, and it's only been in the last year or 2 years that I've started to focus on my own stuff. So now I'm very much well and truly obsessed with comedy, and there isn't anything else. I probably just don't have any other skill sets for any other industries, is the point, probably.
It's always interesting. I mean, we'll talk about your kind of online stuff later. That video kind of goes viral every now and again. So some meme account will post your performance on BGT, and it'll get 300,000 views or whatever. Is all publicity good publicity, or is it a bit annoying that someone's kind of hijacking kind of what you've done?
Yeah, I suppose it's great to see and be reminded that it did so well. I think that's the bottom line, and that's what I always come back to. When people send me a message and they say, this is you, isn't it? And people say, it brightened up my day, or it always makes me laugh, or quite often I'll speak to someone who I don't know, and then the conversation might come up and they say, yeah, I've seen that video. It's gone viral online. And I think it's probably only your own frustration when, you can put a video out and nobody watches it, or everyone watches it, and if I can probably get half the views that some other people have got on something that's your own, but I suppose you can only take that as a positive that people are enjoying it. So, it is what it is at the end of the day.
After BGT, so the other thing that people will possibly know you from is your parody videos and your work online. Was that out of lockdown that was that was really the only option, or did you kind of particularly want to do kind of online sketches and parodies?
It was out of lockdown. I started to think, I really want to do this, and it was finally time to do my own stuff, and I didn't know where to start. So it all began in the end with a lockdown therapist that I thought actually maybe she could provide some light relief amongst the madness, and I started filming them in the garden. So that was kind of, I never really thought anything much of it other than I just wanted to put content out there, and that's when I started my YouTube channel. But I was getting, very few views, and I just thought, I'm kind of really doing it for myself, because I don't know whether, if anyone's ever going to see any of this stuff. And then it was when Liz Truss came along that just some friends said, you need to do a parody of her because you look a little bit like her. And I thought, that's ridiculous. I don't even know who she is, because I thought she was a comedian. I genuinely thought that Liz Truss was a comedian parodying politicians, and I was jealous of her career because she was doing a better job at comedy than I was. So it just happened overnight. I did this just to appease some friends. It then blew up on YouTube, and I just was watching all of my views and subscriber count just suddenly drastically change, and that was the turning point, which is amazing. But I mean, it did take a couple of years to get to that point. I mean, I started doing all of my videos in 2020, and it was 2022 when Liz came into being in power. So yeah, it was a long old slog, that's for sure.
Yeah, I've spoken to some other people who kind of do online comedy. That kind of, you might put your heart and soul into something, spend hours filming it, editing it, and sometimes for whatever reason, the algorithm, whatever, you don't get a boost from a particular account, all those kind of things that help it go viral. It just kind of goes nowhere. I mean, how disheartening is it that sometimes, the effort and the reward are not necessarily correlated?
Yeah, I think it's a really tricky one, because if you're not careful, you can spend all your time on your phone. And I think that's of anyone, even if you're not a content creator. And it can be quite disheartening when, especially if you have spent a long time, you've got a really good idea and you think, this is going to go down really well. And then you spend ages on the editing because you want to get it perfect. And then by the time you've uploaded it to every different site, which requires different ways of formatting, and you think, at least there'll be something come back from it, and then nobody watches it. I seem to have learnt a lesson now, which is, one, if you don't put any effort into it, quite often that's the one that goes viral. And also to not worry about it, because you just have no control over it. And I try to limit the amount of time I give it now, because quite often that's the biggest lesson I learned, I think, in Edinburgh last year, was that whatever you perceive something to be, or however funny you perceive something to be, the audience will always see it in a different way. So I think the truth is you just don't ever know, really, and I think it's hard to remind yourself of that sometimes. Some days are easier than others, but yeah, I try to take it all with a pinch of salt where I can.
A lot of the stuff is politically based, so it's topical. Do you almost have to be there ready when something happens? Do you kind of have that almost like a kind of checklist to say, right, this is going to take me 3 hours from idea to getting it out? Is the thing that's happening worth writing about? Because you almost have to kind of make that decision pretty quickly, I guess.
Yeah, there's lots of decisions to make in a very short space of time, which is ironic because I hate making decisions and I'm awful at them. So you have to decide, is it worth it? How long is it going to be? How can I shorten it down? You don't want it too long. It needs to get the attention. And also what you're doing it for. I feel very much at the moment needing to really have an intention of, like, my comedy has always been, I just want to provide a bit of lightness and silliness. It's not necessarily that I have a real thing of needing to slam anyone or anything. I'm actually driven by the characters. So if, say that, like Liz Truss, for example, if she did something silly or she couldn't get out the door, I think that's quite funny from a character point of view, and how can I make that bigger, or how can I make it into a sort of silly clown kind of thing. So it's normally the character that drives me, and then if the theme is interesting enough, that I have to make sure that I time it just right, because quite often I've got other work or my day job and things. So it's always sod's law. I think they do it on purpose. They do something ridiculous and they time it when I'm busy, so they try and stop me from parodying them. That's my theory. And I'm like, no, I will get one out, come rain or shine.
The upside and the downside of doing it, obviously you want something to go well and hopefully go viral, but then obviously the downside of that is there's a certain percentage of people online who are just a complete arseholes, basically. So anything that does particularly well will, by the law of large numbers, you will attract a certain number of arseholes. I mean, how do you kind of find that kind of thing when that happens?
To be honest, I think I go through different feelings around it. I mean, I'm sure everyone will say different things, and I think lots at the beginning I'd say, I'm not that bothered about it, not that bothered. But I think it's interesting when Liz Truss left, and I've felt this sense of where do I go now? What's my direction? Particularly because I wasn't necessarily someone who was overly passionate about politics or felt like I needed to give my voice over to it. And it just happened, like I say, through the character side of things. And then I thought, well, where do I go next? What's my journey? What do I focus on? And I built this following for political satire, so they're expecting that. So I'm having to sort of put that out there, but then also enjoying it because I've got used to it now, but equally wanting to do my own other original characters and sketches. So it's a real match of stuff on my YouTube particularly. So when people say, you should have stuck to Liz Truss or I don't know, whatever you're doing now, they'll have a thing to say about it. I think at first that took me a little while to get my head around because I was feeling a bit like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And you always want to shout that down the keyboard and say, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying my best. But I think the thing is I do now just go, do you know what? It doesn't matter because I see it as like an experiment for myself. I'm just trying things, see what happens. And I think any comedian would probably say the same, or content creator. There are days where you feel like nothing can touch you, and then if you just happen to have a bad day, as we all do, I don't know, something you fall over or something happens, then that happens on top. You think, oh no, it's awful. So I think it's all relative really, but yeah, you just get used to it and make a thing of it, I think.
And in terms of promoting it, so you've got, like you said, YouTube, Twitter. Are you on Blue Sky and all the rest of those other things, or do you try and focus on one or two channels and try and that work best for you and kind of work those better?
Now you said that, you've given me an idea. I should probably do the latter. Thank you. No, but I'm actually on all of them. I find it, I have to be honest, I find it so stressful. I don't know about you, but there's so many different socials, and then you're trying to work out what they all need, how you should caption one, how you should do this, what time you should put them up. And I don't know. I just throw it all out there and see. I mean, for me, YouTube and TikTok seem to be my best ones, and they're the most constant. Whereas obviously we know the problems that we've had with X, and Blue Sky seems very lovely as well, but I haven't quite mastered how to work that. And then Threads, I don't really understand that either. So you'll see me just keep putting stuff out there and hoping for the best and talking nonsense until someone bites back and says something.
You're saying about Liz Truss, I mean, has that kind of been do you see it as a blessing or a curse, the whole Liz Truss thing?
No, I definitely do see it as a blessing, I think, which is a strange thing to say about Liz Truss probably for most of society, but for my own personal gain, I think what's great about it is that it gained me the following and the interest that I did. And for that period of time, I was getting interest on radio, TV, and, things were starting to open. And I don't think that I would have done Edinburgh last year if it wasn't for her, which is a ridiculous sentence. But I'd wanted to do my own solo show for so long. And I think I kept putting it off because of obviously working with other people or because of finance and all of these things. And it just felt that it was now or never. And this was the way into that. And I would love to do it again. Probably maybe it wouldn't be, Liz wouldn't be involved. Maybe it would be pure stand-up, or maybe it'd just be sketch comedy, whatever that is. But it definitely is a blessing. I mean, it's a curse in the sense that it could have just lasted a little bit longer, like 49 days. And then it was all gone. And I think, oh gosh, imagine if she'd have even lasted like, I don't know, 3 months or something. I could have achieved, I see where I'd have gone from there. But I also think I'd have been exhausted because that woman kept me so busy. And daily, I never had a break. It was the curtsy, the Queen. I'm so tired and my eye was twitching all the time.
Yeah. I mean, yes, it's a bit different to say someone who was a Queen Elizabeth II impersonator. You know, they get 60 years work out of it, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Cram it into a few weeks.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous.
So, yes, you're saying about the Edinburgh Fringe show. When in the year did you decide, yes, I'm going to do it?
I decided quite early on. I think January I started applying, and I think I just knew I had to go. I didn't really mind where I went or what venue or what time. I just sort of knew that I had to do it. And I had also worked on the show previously the year before at the Camden Fringe and put on a work in progress. So I had done the show maybe 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 before I decided I was going to go. So it was more about then tweaking it and working out what the style of it was going to be ahead of Edinburgh. So I was probably the most prepared I've ever been in my life, to be honest, if I think on it, because I don't think I would be in the same situation now, but I think that goes to show when you've got a theme or you've got an idea in your head and it becomes easier to mould. But yeah, gosh, the most stressful time. I mean, any comedian or any creative that goes to Edinburgh will probably say the same thing, I'm sure, but it's just, you forget how many things you need to think about, because it's one thing securing a venue and thinking about your material, but then you think about PR and you think about marketing. How do you sell your show? What are your posters going to look like? What's your blurb? And just overthinking, everything. And then by the time it gets to the run up to Edinburgh, just before you start, you go, oh no, I haven't worked on my show. I need to go and learn that now. So yeah, I'm glad I was as prepared as I was, because I think it would have been a nightmare otherwise. I don't know how Lizzie and I did it, my comedy partner and I, when we had Franks and Skinner, we took 2 shows to Edinburgh, and both of those shows I think we created in May or June and went up in August. I don't know how we did that. I think we just must have been young and had more energy.
Yeah, I think that's partly it. And I think a lot, as time's gone on, it's become more professional, or more you almost have to have a kind of finished product. It's not a place to go and develop and learn and start with something messy, and by the end of the month you've got something a bit more polished. You almost have to have that polished thing right from the beginning. Did you do many work in progresses in the kind of run up to August?
Yeah, I think I tried to aim for 1 a month. So I did all the main festivals: Leicester, Bath, Brighton. I did Tunbridge Wells, Manchester. So I tried to do just 1 in these places, because I didn't know whether I'd be able to sell them and those kind of things either in the run up, and then just went there. But in hindsight, maybe it would have been better to have done a few more, I think, just so that you're really on top of it and you're ready, because you just go up to Edinburgh and you're sort of, there's no rehearsal time. You're just in and you're doing it, and you're doing it every day. And I think you need that strength, and not just mentally but physically, to keep doing it every day and have that energy. So I think maybe it would have been good to have got my head into gear, fitness wise, ready ahead of Edinburgh, because all I ended up doing was just drinking beer and eating chips, on top of performing every day.
And how did you find the promotional side of it? Whether that's flyering or any other kind of PR and those kind of stuff. I mean, because it's obviously it's quite full on, and you almost have to restart every day.
Yeah. Because I was very fortunate in that I had raised some money through crowdfunder, because I was really worried. Finances have always been a real tricky area for me when it comes to comedy and things, and I think that's probably why I've never gone to Edinburgh before, and I'm sure it's the same for most people, really, because it is becoming and has become so much more expensive. But because I had crowdfunded and I knew I wanted to go, it enabled me to raise enough money to get PR. So the lovely guy called Julian, who did textual healing PR, he really helped me out, and it sort of took a layer of stress away from me in terms of trying to send my press release out to all of these people who I didn't know who I was sending it to. So that was really good. And then in terms of actually promotional stuff and leafleting, and I mean, everyone hates it. I don't know anyone who loves it, but I'm sure there are people out there who do. But the one good thing was doing it as Liz Truss was so much easier, because I could just go up the street and talk nonsense to people. and, you know, she doesn't know where she is, my version of her. I'd just be like, oh, excuse me, do you know where I am? You know, and because you could come to my show. I'm doing a show all about being exercised. I think it means we're going to get sweaty and go on a running machine. And people were just so confused by what I was talking about that it made them stop. And she doesn't care, you know, if you're being a character, she's absolutely oblivious to what was going on, and it worked perfectly. So it was probably the only time I actually quite enjoyed flyering. Doing it as myself, I'd probably hate it. So yeah, it would be interesting to see if it would be the same the next time I go up.
And did you bump into her? Because she was actually up there, wasn't she? I saw quite a few people take pictures recreating her pose up in Edinburgh.
Yeah, she. I didn't bump into her, unfortunately. I really hoped that would happen, and I even tried to reach out to her team to say, "Oh, I'll be outside your venue when you're doing your talk, and we could have a picture, and maybe I could hand her some cheese or something." But that didn't work. But I did hang outside her talk. Just before I annoyingly, hers actually clashed with my show. So I think she was doing that on purpose as well, try and steal my audience. So I went out and flyered her whole queue and gave them my flyer and said that I was the real Liz Truss and she was the fake one, to boycott it. So I actually did get a lot of sales after that day, because the next day they'd come back and watch mine. So that, yeah, it was really funny, that, because I had a lot of people on the street looking over at me, really confused and taking pictures, because I think they thought I was the real Liz Truss, because I even attracted some TV interest from like the STV who were coming to film me talking about her in there. And people were thinking I was Liz Truss talking about my speech inside. So, yeah, very strange, very surreal time that was.
And you're saying, you hope to go again. So you've got a new work in progress that you're doing at Brighton Fringe, for example. Is a lot of people I speak to now are almost on a 2-year cycle, having to both financially and creatively, create a new show every year is a bit much. So going more on 2-year cycle. Do you see something like that for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think that seems to be the most sensible way, because I just don't know how you would keep going up there every year unless you had, a very cheap way of doing it up there, or obviously had lots of financial backing or whatever that is. But I think even the creative side, like you say, I think it takes so much energy trying to come up with content. And I think in a way, I was probably quite blessed with that one, because there was so much material, and I did probably too much material, and I didn't know what to go in and what to lose. Whereas now, starting from scratch and trying to work out what the theme would be, what's the tricky second album, what do you do next? So I think giving some time and space, and rather than just rushing and running up there, because I think it has, like you said earlier, I think you bang on the nail with it, because I think it has changed up there. It used to be a place where you could go and just do work in progress shows and sort of throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. But it does feel like it now needs to be more polished, and maybe that's just the pressure that we put on ourselves because it costs so much money as well. But it does feel like you need to go up there with a really strong idea that you've really thought through. So yeah, I think if I do go, it'll be the following year for sure.
You do a comedy night. How have you found that? Because I've been along to one of them. How have you found running a comedy night?
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's so nice to connect with people who live locally, because I sort of moved to the area and didn't really know anyone, and also in terms of comedy, there wasn't really much around the area that, it's sort of far and few between. And I was just really wanted to be able to just speak to people who live nearby. And what this enables me to do is, by being the MC or the host, you actually do get to know people, chat to people, you get your regulars coming back, but also get to showcase comedy talent that you've seen on the circuit that you really like, and maybe those people haven't had as many slots in different places or whatever, or maybe they are, and you just want to show everyone who you found. So it's quite nice to just bring a bunch of people together to perform and just have a nice night that there's no pressure. So often as a comedian you go to these gigs and feels like there's pressure, especially maybe there's a competition or you're trying to get through to the next thing, or get the next gig, and I've really been enjoying it. And it's also nice for me to cut my teeth as an MC, because I never really had the opportunity to do that until creating my own night. So I like the idea of looking after the crowd and gaining some new skills at the same time.
Yeah, I've always found it interesting in comedy where if you're starting out, the kind of gigs you get are probably the absolute worst kind of gig you want as a new comedian. They're the kind of things that even an accomplished professional will find tricky. Where A, the audience isn't there for you, and B, half of them are up for a ruck anyway. So, I think it makes a lot of sense where you don't want to make it too easy. You want to challenge, you want to develop, but you don't want it to be the case that, your first 5 minutes is just so disastrous that you never want to do it again.
Yeah, I think it's also really interesting because quite a lot of the comedy nights, like you say, especially if you're starting out, generally you've just got your friends or other comedians in the audience, because there isn't an audience necessarily. Then you have the other end where if you're doing a proper pro gig that costs a lot of money for the audience to come, they come with a certain layer of expectation of what they want it to be. Whereas what's really nice about this one, just being local, it's the ticket price is quite low, and we just try and have a laugh and bring people together. And all of the acts that come to do it, including myself, we just say, oh, it's really nice because it's just the people are just lovely people that are just really want this to I don't know, escape for a night and have a laugh. So yeah, I just think it's quite nice to do something a little bit different, I think.
Absolutely. And so for the rest of 2025, so you're saying not doing Edinburgh, developing the show, what other plans do you have in kind of, whether that's online or stand-up and those kind of things? Do you have kind of in your head the year mapped out at all, or is it just like you said, you kind of see what happens with the flow of things?
I want to give you a professional answer that makes me sound really good, and my professional answer would be yes, I've got it all mapped out, and I'm so excited about all of the different months and all of the goals I'm going to hit at the end of each of them. And the real answer is I've got no clue what I'm doing. I have no clue what I'm doing. But I'm sort of enjoying that, because I think last year it was also, Edinburgh focus. I've got to do this, got to do that. And then I let everything else kind of fall by the wayside in terms of I didn't have time to put as much content out there and keep my YouTube and particularly YouTube and TikTok kind of going. And I found that really hard to try and do a bit of everything. So I like the idea of stepping back a little bit, but trying to do more content, but also more live shows, even if it's just stand up for like 10, 20 minutes, whatever that is, to keep that going. As well as auditioning, because I trained in musical theatre initially, I still have an agent for that, and I really like the idea of being able to audition for plays and musicals and all of those things. So I think this year is also about gaining the money back. Probably you'll see me in a couple of weeks just doing 24 hours in Tesco's a day, trying to make my money back. But I think that's the aim: make some money, create lots of stuff, and also just have a bit of fun and be silly and take the pressure off a little bit of what it was last year.
You mentioned Panto as well, where you met someone, and I think you did it again last year. Is Panto a kind of nice thing where, maybe for, I don't know whether it's 4 or 6 weeks, it used to be 3 months again when I was a kid, that, it ran from November to February, and I know it's a much shorter run now, but is that nice to kind of know, hopefully every year you've got that block of work?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a real love for Panto. I mean, I think it's so much fun, and quite often it's children's first experience of theatre, and there's so little that come along, and I think that really imprints nice memories for families and things. So I think it's a really special thing, especially at that time of year, and really magical. And I like the idea that sometimes it's the only time of the year that I know I'm guaranteed some form of routine. So I look at people who've got 9 to 5s, and I get quite jealous of that sometimes, because it's nice to just know that that's what you do and when your days off are. Whereas you just don't get that being self-employed at all, whichever industry you're in. So it's really nice that there's a certain time of the year where you do go, this is where I am at this time, and I know what I can fit in and around that. But yeah, the like you say, it's so strange, because it used to be that the runs were 3 months or something. They were really long. But the last couple of pantos I've done have maybe been 4 or 5 week runs or something, which is still equally as nice. It's not, too exhausting. But I think I've only just recovered from the one I've just done. to be honest, it was I was so tired, but also everyone got ill, everyone had that flu thing. And I feel like all we did was just pass it round to each other. That makes us sound like we were all getting together. Not like that, but it just was going round, and then you'd get well again, and then you get another bout of it. So I think it's just the exhaustion mixed with, being around the same people and things. So it does take, you need another 2 months after it to come back down.
Fantastic.
Many thanks to Nerine for taking part. You can find more details in the show notes about where to find Nerine, both online and upcoming shows, and about Crackin Comedy. Thanks for listening.